Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is episode 205. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week, I'm very happy to bring back Lila, a past guest from August 2023. If you recall in that interview, Lila had pretty severe misophonia and was even being triggered by a neighbor during our call. Well, a lot has changed for her in the past couple of years. She's now on the other side of the world, back here in the US. She tells her story of recently successfully overcoming misophonia. The modality she credits is hypnotherapy, which has come up in some online spaces as having helped people. Well, if you've been curious in learning more, in this conversation you'll hear about Lila's background, how she stumbled upon hypnotherapy, how her process works, and what it's been like since she did it, and her current process of follow-on sessions she does on her own. I hope this sheds some real talk on the topic of hypnotherapy, which is definitely outside the mainstream and has its supporters, skeptics, and detractors. And for the record, as always, I'm a curious and open-minded skeptic by nature. Lila is all over social media, and I'll have links on social and here in the show notes. She's open to talking to anyone about this, so feel free to reach out. After this show, let me know what you think. As always, you can reach out by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. By the way, please do head over and leave a quick rating wherever you listen to the show. It helps drive us up in the algorithms, which is where a lot of our listeners come from. And a few more of my usual announcements. The misophonia.shop is open. The merch shop that I finally relaunched, where you can find shirts, hats, the AirPod cases, all related to the podcast. And I'm just getting started, so watch that space for a lot more. Already, all profits go to support the podcast in raising awareness, of course, and pays for recording and hosting fees. Also, I'm giving 5% to support research via SoQuiet.org, and the rest goes towards some special projects coming up that are going to support misophonia research, and I'll have more about that in the coming weeks. Also, of course, thanks for the incredible ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing, you can read all about the various levels at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. All right, here's my conversation with Lila. Lila, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
I'm so happy to be back here with you.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you again. And we'll get into a lot of the changes that have been going on, but do you want to maybe just tell us kind of roughly where you are now in the world?
Oh, you mean geographically?
Yeah, geographically.
I'm currently in Northern California. I live in a small town in Northern California. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, so I guess, do you want to maybe let's talk about kind of what you're doing now, because and then we can maybe work backwards or just kind of keep it organic. But but I should say first, actually, you reached out again on Instagram because you are, and you did a YouTube post actually related to misophonia and how you've made some progress there. Do you want to kind of like share that with us? Let's start with the good news.
Yep. I mean, that's why I reached out. I'm just such a sharer. Like when I discover things, I'm like, oh my God, everyone else needs to know this, especially with misophonia. I just realized, have I been pronouncing it wrong all of these years of my suffering? You said misophonia.
Yeah. Again, it's so new that I don't know if there's an official one, but I hear most people say misophonia.
Oh my gosh, how funny.
Yeah, I've heard other terms as well, but it just happens to be what people, I think, gravitate more towards.
I like that better because misophonia sounds like a hatred of miso soup. And I love miso soup. So misophonia, oh my gosh, I can't even believe. I just can't even believe this has happened to my life. And just so happy to be here on this podcast to share this hopefulness with anyone out there who's listening to this, who's struggling. I thought I would live with this condition forever. It started when I was 11. And just struggled for, over 20 years. And recently, this is what the YouTube video is about. I recently you can ask me more questions about this, but I'll just make sure I answer one question at a time. But through a series of synchronistic events, was able to begin my healing journey with it. I want to say healed it. I want to say those words like it's 100% done. It's not. I actually, oh, it was last night. I was at dinner and I was triggered last night actually, but it's, oh my God, I can't even like begin to explain. It is, my life is completely different now. I would say I'm 95% healed, and understandably there's still that, sometimes occasional trigger, but that's really what I wanted to share with people, that healing is possible. And I thought that was not a possibility for me and my life. And it's changing everything in the best ways.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And yeah, let me just talk about how you got there. So I
Yeah.
understand hypnotherapy was involved.
Yes.
So what? And I think that's become a hot topic because there have been some
Mm-hmm.
reported, positive cases using hypnotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about? Yeah, I mean, tactically, like, did you reach out to somebody? Did you start to do it on yourself? I maybe explain a little bit about how hypnotherapy works and how that helped you and how you bumped into it.
Totally. No, it was not a self thing. I had read many years ago that there might be maybe solutions for it. But when I read about the solutions, they just seemed so unattainable for me. Like you had to see, a therapist regularly. And I was just like, I would rather live with this condition than do what it might maybe take to make it.
Yeah.
It just seemed impossible. I was like, even if I did that, it's not, this is just like how my brain is wired. So it happened it was just one of those freaking miracle moments. I had just got back to LA from overseas and was in an Uber. And because I've struggled with misophonia, is that how you say it? That how you're saying it?
Yeah, misophonia. Yeah.
Misophonia. I really need to reprogram my brain in
It's
this
all
way.
good. Yeah.
Misophonia. So because I've lived with it for so long, as I was getting in the Uber, I had some food that I wanted to eat. But I asked, is it okay if I eat? Because for me, having struggled like being in a car with someone munching would be that's
Hmm.
death. That's like, get me the frick out of here because you're trapped,
Yep.
and it's like oftentimes silent. So I asked out of politeness and he looks back at me and he goes, funny, you should ask. I actually, so he told me a story and he had just seen this hypnotherapist 2 days before to heal his misophonia that he'd been struggling with. I was like, oh my God. I knew immediately. As soon as he looked back and he said, funny, you should ask. I just knew. I was like, oh, he's about to tell me he has
Yeah.
misophonia. And so I was the first person who was going to like eat in front of him.
Mm.
He had really isolated himself in his life due to misophonia, which of course so many of us suffer from that isolation. So yeah, he pulled over. He was like, let's do this. I was like, are you sure? So I took my vegan pizza out and, started munching. I was very insecure and he looked at me and I could just see that he was filled with so much love.
Hmm.
I was like, I literally said to him, and this is not romantic, by the way. He's a gay man, and I said to him, I can feel that your heart is like full of love right now. Is that true? He said, absolutely. So I was his first person. So that was the first synchronicity. And then, of course, I was like, all right, keep me up to date. This is all, we had a long drive together to the airport
Hmm.
and we stayed in contact. I said, just keep me up to date. This is so new for you. If it works out and it sticks, I'm going to see your hypnotherapist. So we stayed in touch for a couple of months and yeah, it was working for him. He said, he had his first meal with his family, because during the holidays, he would isolate himself. Everyone knew forever that he would, you get your food and then he would go off on his own and everyone else would be together. Isn't that sad? So
Right.
hard
Yeah. Yeah.
and understandable too. So yeah, he was having his first meals with his family. Everything was going well. So I got the contact for the hypnotherapist and a month later I was on the couch in at his home office. And, yeah, I mean, I want to stop there just to, because I answered your first question. I know there's going to be a lot more, but you already
No.
know the results.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fascinating because one of the. I
Yeah.
mean, I just had that question come up this morning in another conversation as to
Mm.
like, does it stick? Like how,
Mhm.
the hypnotherapy is
Mhm.
that going to last? And
Mhm.
you definitely waited, did a little bit of a little bit of research there.
Mhm.
Very interesting. Yeah,
Mhm.
great story about the Uber.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, and so okay, so that's great. Now, yeah, maybe take us to so
Mhm.
you're with your hypnotherapist.
Mhm.
How did those sessions go? What did it look like,
Mhm.
and how long did it take?
Okay, great questions. My hypnotherapist is the same person. I
Right,
went to
right,
the
right.
same. I was like, I want to see the exact person that you saw. Like, it worked for you, it'll work for me. And hypnotherapy does not work for everyone. You definitely
Mm-hmm,
need to
mm-hmm.
have an open mind. And I've done a lot of meditation, so I felt like and as an artist as well, like I'm very visual, so I felt like I would probably be a good candidate for it.
Yeah. So did
Hmm.
this hypnotherapist ask you like was there an intake kind of process? Like did you have
We
to kind of filter you through to figure out if there was a high probability?
yes, we did a bit of I think it was like a bit of a discovery call. I may have even paid for that initial consultation. I think I did, which is totally fair on his part to charge for that time. And I'm glad that we did as well, because you're really seeing if you're a match and if the person is a good fit for hypnosis. Um, so yeah, so we did that call. That was online, like Zoom. And then I think it was a couple of weeks or a few weeks. He's in LA. I was in Toronto at the time, where I'm from. And so yeah, when I was back in LA, that was the first thing that I did. And I just the time that I saw him for my first session, like, life is cruel sometimes. I was subletting because I had moved away from LA. It's a long
Mm-hmm.
story, but I was back and I was staying in Venice, and I didn't know that Venice is the loudest, just so loud. So at this time, I'm suffering. I'm subletting this place on a busy street. I've never lived on a busy street before because of my misophonia, because it's like unbearable. Also, as a musician, like, there's so many reasons I would
That's funny
never.
because
Yeah.
Venice, even Venice, California, has those canals and stuff. But I guess
Yeah.
you're living near there are louder parts. I guess near the
Yes, there
beach,
are
probably.
louder
Yeah.
parts, and everyone I would tell that I was there, like, oh yeah, but this is super loud. I wish I knew that. But all that to say, it's all part of the journey of life.
Mm-hmm,
Things
mm-hmm.
happen this way for a reason. But this place I was staying in was triggering as fuck. I hope it's okay that I swear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course,
It was just so
especially
fucking.
related to triggers, you're allowed to swear.
Yeah. I mean, I can't honestly, it's like, even talking about it right now, my body is kind of like going
Mm-hmm.
numb, because it's like the memories of that time. I call that place the cauldron. That place stirred up my misophonia like fuck. It was so close to unbearable. And so that's where I'm staying, where I'm in town, going to
Mm-hmm.
see this hypnotherapist, staying at this really loud place. I'm really suffering. I'm going through a lot of loneliness. It's all related. I think the loneliness thing,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big theme as well. And so I go to the night before I go to my first session. I think was my first night. Yeah, it was at the sublet. And so I felt like trucks were like driving through my brain. Like, it was just, I couldn't sleep. So I didn't sleep that night. I left at 3 a.m. to go sleep at my friend's house. Oh, it was just awful. So I show up there at like whatever it was, 11 a.m, looking like absolute garbage, like underslept, bawling my eyes out, just like unbearable. So our first session and this was our only in-person session, was this one session. It was probably about an hour and a half. I had them film it because I'm someone who likes to share a lot, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to document this and, yeah, share this eventually. I actually haven't seen that. That would be really painful to
Mm-hmm.
watch, but to see, I was just an absolute poor thing. I was suffering. So yeah, for me, hypnosis. So the session, yeah, was like an hour and a half, and it, I can't even remember what happened in the session. Like I don't even know what's worth sharing in that regard. Like you're just basically guided through this experience. And so I'll kind of jump ahead and say that that was my first and only in person. And then I was staying at this crazy place, this loud place, for 3 weeks after that. The initial session exploded my misophonia.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all of my nerves were just like on fire. I was on the phone with my mom that night, the night after my first session, and I was like, I don't know if I can live through this. Like, I don't know if I'll survive this. Yeah, it was really,
Interesting. So
really hard. Yeah.
yeah, so I guess so
But then it
I
got
guess
better.
yeah, well
Yeah.
yeah. We'll get to
Yeah.
that. Right. Well,
Yeah.
obviously, I mean, yeah, we
Yeah.
started with the good news.
Yeah.
So some of the questions people might have are like, how do you get into the hypnosis state? Are you unconscious? Like, maybe talk a little bit about like
Yeah.
what that was like.
Yeah. I just want to let you guys know, you guys being the listeners and you, the lovely host, that this is bringing up feelings for me. I haven't really
Yeah, sure.
I haven't
Well,
really, it's really important too, if for those of you listening, like make sure you get an integration coach afterwards if you can, if you have the capabilities. Because of my life dynamics, like I've just been moving around a lot.
yeah.
I haven't really truly processed this. So that's another reason that I thought this interview would be good, probably on a personal level, is to
And
really
take your
talk
time
through
if you need to.
this.
Yeah, if you need to take
Yeah,
time.
thank
Yeah,
you.
please don't think that you need to go through
Yeah,
like talk about everything. So yeah,
it's an emotional process. So I'll answer your questions and just throw in a
yeah,
bunch more to say, like, misophonia is a trauma response.
yeah,
So that's what I've learned. And so if it brings up feelings for you, of course, when you're triggered, also when you're healing, that is totally normal and that is totally okay. So I just want to tell you all that's a part of the process, and just seek connection with others who have gone through this. Reach out to me, please. Reach out to
yeah.
me. Open invitation. I am here for it. To answer your question, when I go into hypnosis, and I do continue it now in other ways, in other areas of my life, because it changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of go so deep into it that I don't even know what's happening.
Mm.
So I don't remember that first initial one. And I do have the recording of that, like I said. So it would be cool for me to listen back. But you're basically guided, in a lot of hypnosis, you may tune in with your body first, sort of like a mindfulness meditation. Then you go down some stairs, like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you're in this new kind of guided reality experience. And then from there, I couldn't tell you where we went in that first session. I have no idea,
Mm-hmm.
but I was in it. And I think the actual like guidance part probably was only like 45 minutes or something like that. And he did try to, and I've been to one of his conferences since, or one of his like live sort of events.
Yeah.
And some people, like, they come up and then he's like 3, 2, 1, and then they fall. You kind of like fall
Yeah.
over like they're asleep. I'm not a good candidate for that. So
Yeah.
he tried to do that in our first session. I think I'm pretty, the way he puts it, he said it very nicely. I think he said I'm very intellectual. I'm very headstrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't work for me, but I'm really good at being guided and following like a guided meditation. So that's really what it feels like. And I think something that the Uber driver shared with me really was helpful. He said to me, and I saw it in his eyes when I was eating, my food in the car. He said, it's basically like, you don't want to just remove the issue, because then there's a void. So what
Mm.
really we're replacing it with, and for me in this case, I'm not sure if this is true across the board. I'd like to learn more about this, or learn from others who have, been through their healing, is connection. So the misophonia like has really isolated me and created so much loneliness in my life. And so on the other side of being triggered by people is the opportunity for connection and love and belonging, which I now, because eating meals, like that is like the universal fucking space for connection,
Mm-hmm.
culturally, globally. Like this is the way people connect throughout time, throughout history. So I've been, that space for me, that deep connection space for me has been very isolated. So I know that through that initial session, to bring it back to that, I know that part of that was definitely directed towards knowing or being guided towards the love and the connection that's possible in my life. So I'll pause there. I'll pause there on that first session, and then say that we did he offered me 2 other sessions that were online on Zoom, and they were shorter. They were kind of like, you could say, touch-up sessions. And like I said, I was fucking in it after that. It was like as if my misophonia, the volume was turned up times a million. Also, I was not staying in a conducive space for healing. It was a beautiful state. This is like a luxury home, but on this busy street. And for someone like me, or for a lot of people with misophonia, like that was torture. So the volume was turned up on all of that. So we did like a couple of touch-up sessions over the following weeks. He was so generous and so present with me through that. And slowly, so those were recorded as well. And I would listen to those. I think I was a bad girl. I was supposed to listen to them every night. And it's insane that I didn't. I don't think that I did even. I think that I was like very scattered with it. I had a lot going on at that time. But yeah, we had those touch-up sessions, and I was meant to listen to them every day. And then I'm trying to remember how it was definitely when I was at that house. So it was within the month. It was probably like a couple weeks later, I did start to notice the changes. And it started, oh my gosh, it started in yoga class. I was going to yoga, and I would always bring earplugs with me. I still do. I have earplugs wherever I go because I have sensitive ears. That's forever. I'm a musician, I'm an audiophile. I love sound. I know that we have that in common as well. So, earplugs are always a sidekick no matter what. So as our headphones, like sound blockers have been an important part of my managing coping strategy. But yoga class, I would always bring my earplugs because of the heavy breathing. I mean, it was I don't even know. Is it okay to talk about specific triggers on the show?
Yeah.
I've been doing it the whole time, actually.
No one's complained yet.
Okay, great. So sorry to y'all. I don't want to plant ideas for anyone, because that's, I think, what can happen. But anyway, heavy breathing for me would take all of my focus in yoga classes, and I'd just be in that contracted, like anxious space. Or I'd be the girl in the back corner. Always. Yes. That was where I was. In yoga class, that's me. Or actually any kind of group setting. Like I need to be in the place where I can escape if there's like a loud breather. Yeah. Oh God, it's so nice talking to people who understand. So here's where I started to notice it in yoga class. I was like, oh, I remember the first yoga class I went to where I was like, holy shit, Lila, you're just doing yoga. Like you're just doing the thing. You're just stretching. You're just in this class. You're just having your own experience. And the breathing was just a freaking background sound, like probably how it is for other people. I was like, it was almost for the first time I was hearing the world, how the majority of people hear and experience the world. And it was like, I was like, this
you felt safe.
Yeah. And then I started, when I go to yoga class, challenge myself, because it slowly, continued. So I was the girl in the front of the class. I was like, hey, let me challenge myself. So now I do that too. I'm always in the front now. It's just like night and day. That's only one small example, but that's where it started. That's where I started to notice the changes. A few of my best friends who know my struggles. I mean, very few people know my struggle. I've been there's been a lot of shame around it, but I would invite them over for meals. Actually only 2 people, and, people who could really be present to my healing. And, we would sit in silence as a kind of trial. And at first it was like, okay, I can do this. It was bearable. And then I'd be like, okay, I need to put my earplugs in, or let's turn on some music. Like that's enough, for today. But now I'm thinking of my best friend. Actually, I'm going to send this episode to her so she gets to hear her part in this journey. She knows, but oh my God, now we have meals together, and my mind is just blown. Like, wow, we can sit and not have music and just in silence, and we're just talking. And my point of focus is our talking, the conversation. And the eating is a background. I can't even, it's just amazing. So yeah, whoa, I just went deep, and you probably have so many questions about the things I just blasted through, but there you go.
Yeah, that's amazing. So after the initial session, it was obviously difficult, right? When did it start to shift a little bit? and how, like, you have these
Mm-hmm.
touch up sessions, were they
Mm-hmm.
I guess, how were they different maybe from the initial one?
Good question. They were different. Well, your first question was when I started to notice the changes. Like I said, it was definitely within the month because I was in
Mm-hmm.
that house. I think it was probably about a week or two later, maybe a week. No, it was probably a couple weeks later because the touch, I remember like really doing my best to be a strong, like courageous, brave human and like push through on my own. And then finally I texted my hypnotherapist and I was like, I'm really suffering. So I think that our like the next session was probably about 4 or 5 days later. And that was much shorter. He had different names. He's like, I want to try this other type of hypnotherapy with you. One where he kind of like, again, I really kind of, I don't want to call it disassociate. It's definitely not a disassociation, but I go into a hypnotic state,
Mm-hmm.
which you could just say is like, I'm just so in it that I couldn't even tell you like what's happening. I have the recording and I'm supposed to listen to them. I should because I was triggered last night, like I said, so I should do a touch up session. But yeah, they were shorter. They were like 20 minutes guided, and then we do a little check in after, and that was it. And those sessions were really meant for the recording aspect to listen to on my
Mm-hmm.
own.
And so,
Yeah.
are they pretty general? Like, it's not like they get into, sometimes there's reports of like hypnotherapy sessions that are getting into past specific, traumatic events and whatnot.
Mm.
But are these more just kind of more general, meant to kind of like affect your nervous system and kind of calm you down, or because it sounds like you can listen to them over and over again. So I'm assuming that
Mm-hmm.
they're probably a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more general.
I think that they are more general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will eventually, I would like to train to become a hypnotherapist just so I, first of all, can understand what I've been through and also maybe even help other people eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't totally know the answer to this. But yes, it does feel like there's probably a general script that happens, like
Mm-hmm.
and then there are specifics that are filled in due to the person's issues. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're, a lot of people who are addicted to smoking and whatnot, use hypnotherapy as well. And of course there's fill-ins. So I know that for me, like I said, there's something in there about like you're safe, you're safe in this space. Any outside sound is just the sound of life
Mm-hmm.
and love and the possibility for connection, and you're ready now to make more room to do more things in your life, and the
Gotcha.
safety and the love and the connection. Yeah, but besides that, I'm gonna have to obviously, like, I should probably just listen to them as like a, like sitting upright and just like having my morning coffee so I can just like listen and not be in the hypnotic state so I can answer these questions better.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I need, I'm getting curious to kind of, hear from that perspective of somebody who's not heard it from the normal state, just to kind of get a sense for
Right.
what it feels like, or
Mm-hmm.
what you remember or don't remember from when you're listening back. Because it sounds like you do get into a hypnotic state even on your own, right? Without when you're listening back to it.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, definitely, yeah. I actually listen to hypnosis almost every night now, not for my misophonia.
hmm
I, like I said, I should definitely, I'm saying this to myself, like I'm going to do a session today, maybe,
yeah,
not maybe, yes, I will. But no, I do hypnosis like all the time now for everything, for anything, because I'm like, just have seen how powerful it is. And yeah, I either fall asleep, or what feels like fall asleep. Yeah,
yeah.
like
So,
that.
and is your is it a recording your hypnotherapist's voice that you're listening to, or
Yeah,
yeah,
he's recording our sessions. So those two touch
right, of
up
course,
sessions
okay,
that we
yeah,
did, he records them and then he just adds music to it after, and that's
mm,
like mine to use forever. And you mentioned this question in passing, if it like sticks.
yes, you're right,
I think the reason that he records it is that I do think that it's probably something that we need to sort of touch in with every now and then. I'd be curious to hear from others out there. Maybe there are people out there who are just like done with it forever.
hmm hmm
Um, for me, it kind of like slips sometimes, not slips, like it just, yeah, like if I'm having a stressful day or I haven't slept, you know, or there's someone who's a particularly triggering eater, who this person last night at this dinner was. We were sitting in silence. My view, was directly on him, and I used to be triggered by visuals as well.
Yeah, Misophonia.
Yeah. So like people shoving food in their mouth would be really hard for me, like really fast, like kind of throwing the food back.
Oh yeah.
And he was one of those eaters, and he was biting his fork, these types of things.
Oh God. So, yeah.
I know. Yeah. So I was just like, oh my God, like, okay, I'm having a little slip here, but yeah, I have full faith now in the power of hypnosis. So I'm just going to do a touch-up session, and I'm confident that, yeah, I'm still, because like even my friend that I live with now, we have our own houses, but we're attached by a door basically, and we've been best friends for 16 years, and she used to trigger the fuck out of me. Oh my God, her slurping, and she does this thing with her nails on her phone. She used to have fake nails, like clack 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 clack. Oh my God! It was like and now I can't even believe it. Also, she lives upstairs, kind of part of her house is above mine. And the sound of someone walking around, the old me, impossible. Also, I can hear her kitchen from my kitchen, like very clearly. Our kitchens are kind of side by side, and like I can hear her when she puts down a spoon. The old me, like 8 months ago, impossible. I could not live in this home. And this home has been so healing for me, because now when I hear those sounds and I hear her walking around, I'm like, oh, I love her. I get to live with someone that I love. I'm so glad that my best friend is next door. Oh, I feel so safe. I feel so much love and connection and gratitude for those sounds, which is fucking insane, y'all. Talk about night and day. Just wow.
So it sounds like, and this also came up when I was talking to somebody earlier, how some of the hypnotherapy reports that we've heard about recently target specific triggers, like one at a time. But it sounds like for you, it has been kind of a general lifting of misophonia.
That's true.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And
I think
also, go on.
Sorry, I think that might be because, like, again, I'm sure it's dependent on the therapist, but for me, like what I've recalled from it, as I've mentioned, is this sort of like sounds on the outside are safe. They're the sound of connection and love. So it's not, he never says the sound of eating. And also, remember when we were doing the hypnotherapy, I was staying in this very loud space. So for me, the sound of the traffic felt dangerous to my body. Like, oh my God, every time a car would go by, it was like going through my brain. So it was like every sound is a sign of connection and safety. Just really, So I would say that more broad.
Yeah. Like so it sounds like it is a bit, and the recording is a little bit tailored to kind of what you're needing. But love and connection, versus kind of some of the, maybe related to some of the loneliness you were going through. I wonder, do you think that's true? Do you think your Uber driver had a very different, well, not very different, but had his own recording, I guess?
Yes, he had his own. He had his own recording, and I'm okay to share this because I'm not going to share his name. But he also struggled with addiction. So his was, tailored to the combination of those two things, both of which were repaired through the hypnosis, by the way.
Gotcha.
Like he was hooked on meth and like some pretty heavy duty stuff, and also supported through hypnosis.
Yeah. And so you did mention that the Misophonia, and did that start to evaporate as well around the same time as like misophonia? Like it was... Yeah. Okay. And then I'm curious because anyone who's been listening to the podcast knows that I think misophonia, it's about sounds, and misophonia is around visuals, but this is about something much deeper than just one or two of the senses. I'm curious because a lot of us have comorbid conditions. Did this did these sessions in particular start to affect anything else in your life? Maybe that you were going through that you'd want to share.
Yes, definitely. You just said comorbid. I don't
Hmm.
know what that is. Also, can I mute myself because I'm gonna take a
Yeah,
sip
yeah,
of water. I don't want to trigger anyone.
yeah. Comorbid is it's a word that sounds worse than it is. It just means like having other conditions at the same time as another condition. So, for example, like comorbid, like a lot of
Hmm.
people, ADHD is a comorbid condition, meaning
Oh.
people with misophonia,
Hmm.
many of them have ADHD as well. So,
What? I definitely have ADHD. What? I mean, I know. I mean, this is something. This is like the new thing that I'm starting to recognize as
hmm.
well. I didn't know that there was a connection there, possibly.
Yeah, well, it's just there's a lot of people who are diagnosed with both. Well, I know you can't
Oh.
officially get diagnosed with misophonia, but there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
commonality. I've heard of
Hmm.
bipolar as well, not as common,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
Mm.
there's a lot of um, common conditions that overlap or are called
Hmm.
comorbid. So yeah, so
Okay.
I was just curious if you noticed it
Mm-hmm.
to affect other aspects of your life, I guess.
Yes, I would say probably every aspect of my life. I mean, I'm obviously still in integration, because, well, maybe I'll forever be in integration, the emotion that's been coming up today, but, just in conversation. Yeah, every area of my life. I mean, like I said, eating, sharing meals is the cornerstone of what brings people together. And togetherness, a sense of belonging, is something that most humans, the majority of humans, depend on for a joyful life. And so it has shifted every aspect of my life because
Hmm.
that sense of connection is a part of everything. So from my aspirations with my career, moving from having been full time in the music industry, and now when I look at the careers I'm building, the foundation for me is based on, it must be in connection. It must be. And I like it, there's no, like, that just has to be, that's like a requirement. It's like I said, changed my living environment, my capability to, um, yeah, like cohabitate in the way that I am. Dating, holy shitstorms. Like my ex, let's see, as long as I can remember, have not slept next to my partners.
Hmm.
We've always had our own rooms or our own houses. And so now, like, my most recent partner and I were sleeping together. And that was right after the hypnosis. It's actually that now we're getting to personal. It doesn't even matter. The point is,
Sure.
he was my ex. And when we were dating before, we did not sleep together ever. I mean, we
Hmm.
tried. We tried. We tried. 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 We tried so much. By we, I mean me.
Yeah.
And then when we came back together recently during this, misophonia healing, not only was I sleeping next to him, I was sleeping deeper than I had been sleeping. I've suffered from
Hmm.
very severe insomnia as well in the past. And we were sleeping next to each other, and I was waking up so freaking happy because, oh my God, I haven't like slept next to someone in so many years and
Hmm.
actually slept and then turn over and be like, oh my God, there's a human here that I love. So yeah, every aspect, like dating for me in the past, and probably still, this would still happen. Like, let's say we're going out for a meal or something on our first date. I would absolutely categorically know, the first thing I would notice is, how do they eat? Like, can I be with
Yeah.
this person? And now I can just meet people, and that's not the first thing that I'm checking out. And if they're not like the most polite eater, I have more confidence now to be able to manage that. And if we were serious about each other, I'd just be like, hey, can you not like bite your fork, because that's kind of bringing up some past trauma there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, that's good because I was gonna. Yeah, I also ask about obviously these sessions happen. Anything else that you've been kind of doing in your life, whether around the same time or just before? Like you mentioned meditation. Were you seeing like other types of therapists as well? I know you're very health
Mm-hmm.
conscious. I'm just kind of
Mm-hmm.
curious if there were any other kind of parallel things that you were working on around the
Mm.
same time that may have kind of like, amplified or made things more likely to succeed with hypnotherapy.
Mm. Mm. No. Well, I was doing things that would make it really hard for most people to succeed. So I have a lot of faith in the work. I mean, it was really just the craziest life circumstances that I
Yeah.
was in at that time. Like, I had left everything. I had left LA, like kind of like one of those midlife,
Mm-hmm.
overhauls. And so when I was in this Venice house, that was me coming back from overseas, and just everything was just kind of like, what am I doing with my life? So I think I'm a really good example for the possibility. Like, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyone um, who can like let their mind go, I guess, in that way. But I do have a therapist. I see her weekly. That was helpful. We didn't do a ton of integration, but she was absolutely in my corner. We've been together she's been my therapist for 7 years. So she's known me through the major struggles, throughout these years. So yeah, I have weekly therapy. And then when I would say, yo, like after Venice, I came up here where I am now in Northern California, in this small town. I was visiting my best friend here, who I live with now. And I knew immediately that this was my new home based on the sounds. Like, sounds for me
Mm.
will forever be my guide. Like, this is, again, like, I live my life by sound as a musician, as an artist, as an audiophile. And so the sound of Venice, like the trucks running through my brain versus arriving here, and it was peace. It was the sound of the forest. It was the sound of the frogs. And so I would say that ending up here, but this was what, 3-4 weeks into, I was already on my healing journey with the misophonia. And by the time I arrived here, it was like I would highly recommend to anyone going through this to, yeah, have the peace and quiet of a natural setting at some point, to just let your nerves completely unravel.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really helpful, to be in a quiet, healing environment. Honestly, it wasn't even that healing. Like, but she was moving, like her house was full of it was chaotic. But for me, it was just this feeling of safety, really, just like
Mm-hmm.
having my friend nearby, being in nature, being in a quiet environment. That was really helpful. And then eventually, when I found a little bit more stability, it was about a couple weeks later, I did seek out a friend's, sort of an integration therapist. And I'm so glad I worked with him. I only ended up doing, I think, one session with him. Yeah, around the misophonia. And he was the first person I really got to talk to really, really just focus on that. And to really like go through like the pain of like, wow, this is a trauma response. Like, that's a big deal, and everything that my sweet body has been through to protect myself,
Mm-hmm.
and to go back and kind of, I mean, he is a psychotherapist, and psychotherapy has a tendency to go into the past. So to just, revisit some of those points, be like, okay, like it was, my dad was aggressive, and I
Mm-hmm.
understood, not physically towards me, but physically
Mm-hmm.
with objects in the house. So I could read his mood through his
Mm-hmm.
interaction with the objects in the space. And to be able to sort of recap that with the integration therapist was really, really helpful. And I'm happy to share his contact with people, who are listening. If you're going through your healing, he was really helpful in that process as well. But yeah, seeking an integration therapist, highly, highly, highly recommend. I wish I had done that sooner. I wish I continued that. Um, yeah, I would have so many recommendations to people on how to do it better than I did it, but it still worked for me, even though my
Yeah.
life circumstances were chaos. Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting. Bunch of interesting points there. How
Mm-hmm.
it's that safety, at least for you. I mean, that safety part was the key. It was a key part. Even though even though there was chaos, your friend was like whatever, moving and whatnot. You had a sense of safety, which I think gets to
Mm-hmm.
the root of some of this stuff, especially if your past had some kind of complex trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yeah, early on you did mention the integration therapy. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess that was happening, separate from the hypnotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so was that recommended at all? But did your hypnotherapist mention that, or is that something you kind of stumbled upon because your friend happened to be an integration um, specialist or therapist?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, he should recommend integration therapists. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to suggest that to him after this interview.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely let him know because yeah, like when you're making a big switch like this, like a big, huge shift, it's so, I would say so supportive. Not necessary, but supportive. No, it was the same friend, the one that I mentioned who has been through my side through all of this, who
Yeah.
had one of the first meals together during my healing. It was her therapist. She recommended it. She's a healer. She's a psychedelic.
Mm-hmm.
She helps people heal severe trauma with psychedelics, actually. So yeah, she was the one who recommended integration since they use that in that kind of
Yeah.
work. So she had that awareness, and I'm so grateful that she recommended that. That was very, very helpful.
Yeah. And were you using also trying psychedelics too around the same time or?
Good question. No, I am not someone at this stage in my life. I do not mess with um,
Chemicals.
chemicals. For
Plant.
me, my
Yeah.
medicine has been cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And cannabis became a sidekick through the last couple years of this life overhaul. And I think that it helped me through this time. I texted my hypnotherapist during it and I was like, is it okay that I'm smoking weed like almost not all day every day, but like a little bit at the end of the day? And he was like,
Mm-hmm.
look, it's not my favorite plant, but it will not interfere with the hypnosis. And he was
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
yeah.
And yeah, so I guess the integration tech. So I guess what are those sessions like? It's obviously talking
Mm,
about your past, like psychodynamic kind of stuff.
hmm
How does the past um, incidents or traumas get um, brought up or connected to kind of what you're going through now?
That's a good question.
Is your
Hmm
integration therapist? Sorry, let me cut you off. Is your integration therapist? Are those sessions like um, like do you prepare, I don't know, by doing a hypno session before that, or is it linked
Mm,
in any way, or is it just they're two different things but they just happen to work together for you?
hmm Yes, they're two different things and they
Mm-hmm.
just happen to work together for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not someone who works in integration like specifically.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I sought him out. He does do that sometimes. Mostly he also is a psychedelic guide with severe
Gotcha.
trauma. But yes, he does do integration work and that's why I sought him out. And that was a separate thing. And I'm not sure how it normally works when you're like literally seeking them for integration for, let's say a psychedelic session. But for me, it felt like a mix of psychotherapy with the specific talking points of like, okay, like let's just be present to the
Mm-hmm.
fact of like your dad was scary for you growing up. Let's just acknowledge that for a moment, hold space for that. And there was a lot of tenderness around that. And to just have a moment of being present to the fact that that's real. Like I didn't know that misophonia was a trauma response. I just
Mm-hmm.
knew that I was suffering for 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
So to understand that something happened to my body, went into trauma response, like that's pretty heavy duty.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have someone to really just hold you through that, I don't mean physically hold you, I mean hold space
Yeah.
to talk about and unravel the fact that you've been carrying this freaking heavy duty um trauma response in your body, in your brain for all of these years. That's a big deal to slowly unravel that, and to just hold space for that is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And did you ever try to address those memories before? It sounds like you just kind of made the connection between misophonia and the trauma response, but I'm just curious
hmm
if going through the hypnotherapy, if that made it easier to talk about that stuff.
yeah, well, I didn't know before.
Yeah,
I
gotcha,
had no
gotcha.
idea that it was a trauma response
Yeah.
until actually I healed it.
Mm.
Then I was like doing the research, I think. I don't think
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
understood that before. And also, I don't think there's been a ton of, I know that there hasn't been a ton of research until
No,
more
that's
recently.
yes. Well,
You would know
I
better.
would say I wouldn't even say recently. There's been a ton. I think that
Hmm
needs to be done.
Right, right. So, yeah, so I did not know that. And I
Yeah.
had seen when I was living in Toronto, I had seen, I might have mentioned this on our last interview, but I had seen my therapist there. Like I had tried to bring the misophonia to her.
Mm-hmm.
Now at this time, because this was at least 15 years ago, probably more like 18 years ago, she had, oh my God, some of you are going to cringe at this. She had my mom come into, because nobody had training.
Yes.
Nobody knew
Right.
what it was.
Right.
She had my mom come into the session with me and eat in the room.
Oh
Right.
man.
So like a, almost like a, what do you call that?
Exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy,
Yeah.
which for me, this is the interesting, but there's so many psychological factors with misophonia as well, obviously, but it didn't trigger me in that space because it was a controlled environment, you know? It's not like you're just like at the dining table and things are just happening naturally. I was able to withstand it in that type of environment. So that wasn't helpful. And also the therapy, it's just, that's obviously not the way to heal it. Exposure therapy is not the way.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm. As to my
Uh,
knowledge, maybe some people have had success with that. I don't know, but
maybe some people did, but it's generally poo-pooed. even
okay. Okay.
even by the
Yeah.
research.
I'm
So
like, don't recommend
um,
it. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, the other thing I was going to ask. So I don't know. Your relationship with, well, it sounds like you have a relationship with your mom. I'm just kind of curious, since this has been happening, have you talked about that past trauma with your parents? I don't know if your dad's still with us or what's going on there, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of curious if that had any, I don't know, effect on the
Yes,
relationship with your
definitely.
family. Yeah.
Yeah, on the with the I mean, not on the. I have a good relationship with my family. My dad, including my dad. I mean, also he
Mm.
probably was acting from a place of trauma himself, of course, with his
Mm-hmm.
behaviors back then. And we do have a good, I would say, good relationship. He does not know about any of this. I will not share this interview with him.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
does not know about my healing journey. He does not know I've seen a
Okay.
hypnotherapist. He does not know
Interesting.
it's a trauma response.
Yeah.
I just, and whereas my mom is a psychotherapist, dream analyst, and she has been by my side through all of this.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's been so helpful, of course, to have a psychotherapist as a mother has been so helpful. And she's a really good one at that. And also we're very, very, very close. And yes, this whole experience has definitely brought us closer, and something that my mom and I, something that, and my dad and I, because I feel more, like ease, I guess, in the
Mm-hmm.
relationship with him in my heart and in my mind. And my mom, when I was there in Toronto recently, every time, so for me, my biggest triggers were with my family, with the people who were closest to me. And what I realized on this last visit is I was like, oh my God, I think my mom actually is my main trigger. Like, I think she's the hardest one for me, which is so weird because she is the closest person to me on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and I didn't think that she was my trigger. She may have been my original trigger point. It may not have been my dad. I don't know what happened to
Mm-hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe something around abandonment, and then the sounds were,
Mm-hmm.
a sign of lack of safety. I don't know, but her eating, that has been the, like, when I go home, and this is true for people, I think, outside of misophonia, is like when we're with our family, that is when our greatest
Mm-hmm.
like reflections come up. And so, but because my mom is so understanding and so in it with me throughout, I think I was there for a week and a half last time. Throughout our meals, like some meals would be unbearable because I'd be like, hey, let's try this meal in silence. I'd be like, okay, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. Like, let's put some music on, earplugs. The next meal, there were like two meals where we just ate and talked. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
haven't had a meal like that with my mom ever, ever,
Mm-hmm.
that I've just relaxed into a mealtime. I don't think I could say I was exactly totally relaxed,
Mm-hmm.
but I would pause. I would like pause in our like mealtime and say to her, oh my God, we're just like talking. We're just connecting right now. Isn't that amazing? She's like, yep, let's not talk about it. Let's just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's really about the point of focus. You want to keep for me anyway, I found that the point of focus becomes like what it is for most people, which is the conversation, the connection, perhaps even the flavor of the food.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm
Wait,
curious
food
about
is
it.
flavor? It's not just about the sound of people.
Oh my God. Oh my God. We need to talk about this. Okay. I'm so curious to hear from you.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you too, but,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
maybe we should do an interview for you eventually at some point. But, for all of those out there listening to this, like, please reach out to me and let me know what you think about this, or if you can relate to this. Okay. So something I've realized since my healing, So first of all, I don't love to cook. It's just not something I love. I
Mhm.
love being in the studio. I love doing anything other than that. But I also like meal times for me have been so stressful that now I'm starting for most of my life, for almost the entirety of my life up until a few months ago. So I'm like, I wonder if the fact that I hate to cook and that I don't really care, like my number one priority with my quote unquote cooking has not been flavor. It's been functional. It's been like, how do I, also, I'm like a health freak. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's going to be healthy and it's going to be fast. Also, I've been a very fast eater myself, probably because I want to just like get it out of the way.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
curious if other people have this kind of like disinterest in cooking or the taste of food or flavors hasn't necessarily been, or like just the whole experience of eating maybe hasn't been a point of major interest for others with misophonia. I'm
That's
curious.
really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Off the top of my head, I would say I mean, I don't cook a lot, but I do like going down to my kitchen and
Uh-huh.
making food. Yeah, when I'm in I don't know, a good restaurant, I do definitely enjoy different tastes and whatnot. Because for me, I think I usually I usually forget that I have misophonia until it hits, and
Yeah.
so
Oh.
it's not like I don't have some background disinterest in food related to
Mm-hmm.
misophonia. I think
Mm-hmm.
still to this day, even though I've got a freaking podcast and
Mm-hmm.
the book and all this stuff, it's still something that creeps up on me. Misophonia. I'm
Mm.
hoping I'll just go further and further in the background, but yeah, I don't. So I don't. Long story short, I don't think I don't think it's affected that my appreciation for food.
Cool. That's just me then. That's just probably me being a
I'm
cute,
sure there are others,
weird person.
because I think
Yes.
all these senses are somehow related,
Yeah.
and so obviously the misophonia and the misokinesia. I've heard of other other people whose other senses are affected, like touch, obviously, and then but
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of olfactory, like smells. People being,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of this could be like people have sensory disorders and sensory processing disorders and whatnot, so there are different ways these things can be related, but
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I don't know if taste like gives anybody like a fight or flight sensation,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or
It doesn't give me that.
yeah.
It hasn't been an emphasis for me in my
Right.
life, probably for so many reasons, but I'm guessing
Hmm.
that my just contraction around like just eating times in general has created that, possibly added,
Right.
to my dynamic in the kitchen and around mealtime. So, but
Yeah.
I'm working through that too. I'm learning to cook now. And it's like, I'm not only learning how to cook, but learning how to love to cook. There's so
Mm.
much more spaciousness now just around food and meal times in general, of course. 'Cause I'm like, wow, this is something I can share with people. This is something I can enjoy. So I don't know. Maybe it's related. Maybe it's not. Can I ask you another
Please,
question?
yeah, keep going. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I mean, you obviously know that it's possible to heal misophonia since you interview people all the time. So have you healed it? Sounds like you're triggered sometimes as well.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that I'm healed to the point of what you've gone through and what other people have reported. For me, it's more uh, I've kind of, well, I mean, I've done some therapy with a IFS, somebody who's
Mm-hmm.
been trained with internal family systems.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I've only, like you, I think recently just kind of start to make connections with my past childhood,
Mm.
so issues with volatility in the home and whatnot, and just kind of just I didn't even know what the term nervous system was until like a few years ago. I mean, I knew what the term was.
Mm.
I just thought it was like literally physical pain, like putting your hand on a on fire kind of thing. I didn't realize
Mm-hmm.
that there was this emotional like mind body connection. I mean, that's not
Mm-hmm.
what you learn about when you're first generation immigrant living in a religious household. And so
Wow. Yeah.
so a lot of this stuff, so that's kind of helped, just being more aware of my nervous system
Mm.
and self-talk and whatnot, has
Mm-hmm.
helped. The book with Dr. Jean Gregory is pretty CBT focused, so even some of that stuff has been kind of like um new and helpful in the moment, like being able
Mm-hmm.
to kind of like catch my thoughts and kind of think about what I'm thinking about, why I'm thinking about it, how I can kind of like reframe it, and just learning about the difference between the the limbic lizard brain versus the prefrontal cortex. Just
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know, just being more aware of these things has helped. Sleep, stress, like just seeing how that stuff
Mm-hmm.
exacerbates my misophonia. But I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
say that I've done anything that has kind of overnight really taken it down to the level that it has for you. I think it's something that
Wow.
I want to explore, but I
Yeah.
also want to make sure that it's good, that I'm kind of like ripe for it. um,
Sure. Well, what makes someone ripe for it, I guess is my question. Like I I'm sort of I guess I'm a little flabbergasted that you have this podcast and you've written a book and you
mhm.
talk to people who have healed it. You know it's possible and you haven't pursued that. Like I just I just can't recommend it enough. It's life changing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
most people I've talked to haven't. I wouldn't say that. Yeah, most people I've talked to haven't. I mean, they're still living with misophonia. I
Yeah.
think recently there has been some attention around
Mm-hmm.
hypnotherapy in general,
Mm-hmm.
um, it, but yeah, there's also some questions on how long things will stick. That's why it's kind of very. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously also you were immediately interested in how long it stuck
Mm-hmm.
for your Uber friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, there are people exploring, like, okay, there are reports that people are pretty much cured, but it doesn't. There's always cases where it doesn't. Like, there's always exceptions. So I think we're trying to figure out, like, which of these directions would who it would work for.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, I guess, I mean, I'm also like not in a place where I'm like in a very low stress kind of like work environment. So I've been
Mm-hmm.
kind of like waiting. I've been telling some of my
Mm-hmm.
therapist friends, I'm kind of like waiting to kind of like be in a place where I can kind of like get the foundation down, where I can kind of like not be, where I'm sleeping, exercising, and not working to the point where I'm kind of like overly stressed, so that I can pursue one of these approaches. Because I guess in my mind, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I would need to be. It would help to kind of like have a calm nervous system before going into one of these situations. But although talking to you, I'm like,
Yeah.
there was still some chaos, but
Oh,
it
major.
just happened to be maybe, you were around the right people, your best friend,
Mm-hmm.
who could kind of like convince your brain um, that you were in a safe environment, and maybe that was enough. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, long story short, even though I've been doing the podcast for a while, remember I started
Mm-hmm.
thinking like a lot of people, this is like a brain defect kind of thing,
Yeah.
probably. And
Yeah.
so it's been and it's not like I'm doing the podcast full time. It's been a bit of it's been a learning journey, but I am to the
Mm-hmm.
point where experiences like the what you're talking about are things that
Mm-hmm.
they're on my list to explore. So
Okay.
maybe
Well,
2025 will be it, and maybe you'll be my my therapist. Who knows?
oh, that would be beautiful. I really, I'm hearing you, and since you've given so much of your life to be in service to this particular, issue that so many of us suffer. We suffer so deeply. Oh my God, it's just terrible. And so I'm hearing I'm hearing how you think you need to be to get the healing. And I'm a living example of that doesn't matter. I would like my situation. I didn't have my own home. I was a digital nomad for a year and a
Yeah.
half. I like left my career as a musician, left my job as a climate educator. Like I was not with my best friend at first. I was very, very lonely in that house, the cauldron. I called it the cauldron because that's where my healing started to happen. But that was the worst living environment I've ever been in because it was loud
Mm-hmm.
and I was alone. I had just been overseas for a year. I didn't know what my career was going to be. Like I was just completely turned around. And so if that's why I said, if I could do this in these types of circumstances, I do believe that anyone who has who does have that, I don't know what the terminology would be for this. I'm going to ask my hypnotherapist after
Mm-hmm.
this. like the type of mind that is easily, but even that, because he knows, and he said this in front of everyone at that live conference, he was like, well, again, he said it in a very nice way. He's like, because he tried to do the like
Yeah.
drop your hand and then you're asleep thing. And I was like, everyone else, it was working. And he was like doing this crazy, he's kind of one of those famous hypnotherapists. I didn't care who he was, by the way. I just knew he had healed this person I met.
Right.
But then I was like, oh, you're kind of a star. He works with like some famous people and he's on YouTube and, is like doing the stage stuff and people are going limp in his hands. I'm not one of those people who would respond to that, but I am one of those people who did respond to the hypnotherapy. And so I'm here as a loving reminder to you, first and foremost, because I'm hearing you that you can absolutely do this whenever you feel it's right for you. And I don't think it's circumstantial. I actually think that it's probably better that you do have some disorder, because life is full of disorder. It's never going to be just calm. You know that.
Yeah.
It comes and it goes. Life is like that. So we also need to be able to work with some material here when it comes up. We need to
Another
be in the
point.
fire.
Yeah,
we do. Because otherwise, how are we knowing that it's working? How are we able to work through those triggers? How are we able to soften around it? I wasn't with my best friend until a few weeks later. And like I said, she was in the process of moving. And anyone who's moved out there knows that's not a calm environment.
God.
It was crazy, but it was her. It was just that I had
Right.
someone finally to just be with. But that's my own story around loneliness. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that too. But, I'm very inspired by this conversation as well. And I know we're closing out here. So I just want to say, like, it's always in the back of my mind, like, maybe, life brings these opportunities, and maybe part of mine is to really pursue this path to support other people. So if there's like an onslaught of people, I really open invitation, like, please share my social media links so that people know who I am. Sure. I'm so open about this at this point. Like, I made a YouTube video about this because I started a TikTok page. I'm not pursuing that, but I literally created a TikTok page simply to say, anyone out there who has this thing, like, there's hope, so please reach out to me. And if enough people are like, I want to heal with you, I want to do this, then I would go ahead and do the training so I can support. And I would also probably do some integration training so I could help people through the integration process. But well,
you were kind of on fire right there. You just hit a lot of fascinating insights. And I'm sure you can probably be hearing myself even. I was like, I'm probably overthinking, and I'm kind of overthinking, which a lot of us are. If that's a condition, that's something that I think a lot of us have as a comorbidity. We tend to overthink, overanalyze, and probably there might be stuff I'm just kind of subconsciously trying to suppress.
That's it. And we're also like, we're so used to, like, that was me. Like, that's who I was that's all I knew for so long. And I didn't think life was possible without it. I said to myself, okay, this is going to be this is going to be like the grand finale right here.
Sure, yeah.
I said to myself, I mean, I'm happy to keep talking, but I said to myself, if I can do this, I can do anything. Anything. And my dreams are pretty big. So now I'm like, okay, I did it. Like, I healed that. I have this sculpture in my studio here. It's a sculpture of these ears. It's kind of weird. I'll send you a picture after, but it's a reminder that I did that. I did that, and now I can do anything, because life is full of hurdles, and I didn't think I could. I didn't think I had the capability, and I did, and I can already support people. I'm just going to put it that way. Like, I'm feeling really excited by this conversation, and just even talking to you about it. I'm like, I want to support you in taking that leap whenever you're ready. Like, I'm in your corner, and I am a coach. I mean, that is what I do. So that's probably the enthusiasm you're hearing, but specific to sound sensitivity and being able to support people with hypnosis, that's important that you see someone who is, an expert. But if you need that safety and that person in your corner to hold your hand and really, just take the plunge and find the resources within yourself and outside of yourself, I am here for that, because life changing. Whoa. Yeah. I still can't. I'm amazed every day. Like, just can't even. My friends walking around upstairs, I'm like, no big deal. Do you remember our last interview?
I purposely tried to not listen to it because I wanted to come in fresh, but I do
Nice.
remember that it was it was also a time of flux for you.
Oh my God. Well, it's been a couple
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
Anyone
yeah,
who's
yeah.
been through a midlife thing, we call it
Right.
crisis. I don't want to call it a crisis. It's a midlife, reset,
Reawakening. Yeah, reset. Yeah.
reawakening. I was triggered during our
Mm.
call. I was triggered by the
Oh
sound
yes, there was
next
something you
door.
were watching. Yes, yes, yes. I
Yeah,
do remember
no,
that.
my friends who were living in this villa next door, I was
Yeah.
in Indonesia, they were like blasting music, and I was like, that used to be unbearable for me, like hearing people's music next
Yes.
door, and it was just like I needed to have control over all of the sounds in my, if
Hmm.
possible, and if I couldn't, then I'd have to have my sound blockers on. So yeah, it's just like now when I hear my friend playing music, the one that I live with, and she's playing music, I'm like, sometimes the trigger, I'll be like, my brain is like, you're supposed to be triggered by this. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. That's my friend. And I like the music
Hmm.
she's listening to. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I mean, this is inspiring, and like I said, there's been some talk about hypnotherapy around, but
Mm-hmm.
someone who actually has misophonia and is doing
Mm-hmm.
this and has potential healing. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people listening are would be interested, and obviously we'll have links.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone who's listening, the links will be in on social and also in the show notes. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I encourage everyone to reach out. We'll continue the conversation going too, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I should probably pursue this sooner than I think.
Yes. Yes. Perhaps this was partially in order to support you. I mean,
Yeah.
you've given so much to all of us, and now perhaps it's time to take care of yourself.
Well, let's end on that note. Another, yeah,
Yeah.
we started on a happy note, and let's end on a positive note
Hell
there. Thanks
yeah.
again, Lila, and
Yeah, thank
I
you.
think this won't be the last time again that you'll be on. I'd love to
Yeah,
continue the conversation
we should. Yeah,
and see how things go. But yeah, thanks
absolutely.
again.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for creating this space for people out there who are suffering. And there's hope. There is hope.
Thanks again, Lila. Excited that you're doing much better with your misophonia and life in general. This is a lot of food for thought, and there's a lot of things here I want to explore, and I hope to have you back on. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a quick rating or review. Wherever you listen to this podcast, you can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website, misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier just to send a message on Instagram at Misophonia Podcast. Follow there on Facebook, and on Twitter or X, it's Misophonia Show. Support the show by visiting my Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. The music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.